All right, let's welcome in our good friend Bob Vanderplats. Good to see you there, brother. Hope you are avoiding the wasps sitting there in my assassin's seat. How you been?
I've been doing really well. So far, none of the wasps have been coming or buzzing around my head. Only Todd and Aaron have given me a bad time so far today.
All right, I know what you want to talk about today. Are you sure you want to talk about number one? Are you sure?
Well, I do want to talk about number one
it will open a can of worms. Are you sure that's a can of worms that you want to open?
Well, I think what it is, Steve, is when we get into, because you're hearing a lot of complaints. Why didn't anybody know about this? Okay.
So we're talking about Mark Robinson.
Sure.
Right. And his, by the way, his entire senior campaign staff resigned yesterday. So that's not good. And the allegations about what is that him posting these vile things in these forums and these chat rooms. CNN laid out, there's way more detail in terms of a digital signature here than the Washington Post did when they did with Judge Roy Moore, where they essentially just said, hey, we've got these four eyewitnesses of what may or may not have happened in the late 70s to early 80s, so 40 years ago. In this case, I mean, CNN basically laid out, it's CNN, so the whole thing could be made up.
Sure.
Acknowledge that up front. But they laid out a level of specificity here, basically saying, we dare you to sue us. Now, Judge Roy Moore did sue the media. Mm-hmm. Everybody forgets he won. He won an $8.2 million defamation lawsuit, actually. And it's damn near impossible to win defamation lawsuits in America today if you're a public person. And he did win for $8.2 million, okay? But what CNN did here in terms of traceable data and digital signatures, they laid this all out in great specificity, essentially daring the Robinson people to go down the Roy Moore track of suing them, okay? It's CNN, so it's entirely possible they made this whole thing up. But yesterday, his senior campaign staff all resigned as well. So you have some thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, the senior campaign staff leaving, that's not a good sign for Mark Robinson. That almost gives more credibility than the whole CNN story with all the receipts that they provided as well. But somebody's credibility is at stake. It's either Mark Robinson's at stake or it's CNN's at stake. And I can believe, but it shouldn't be that way today, that if you have any sense of journalism integrity whatsoever, that you cannot do something unless you have got this verified and verified and verified again. But in the day of AI, everybody can say, hey, that was not me. That was made up. You guys, or somebody created that stuff to make it look like me. It wasn't me. But when I look at it, Steve, I want to go beyond Mark Robinson. Because now you're in a situation where he's on the ballot regardless. And regardless if he wins the governorship in North Carolina or not, there's other concerns here about what does it do to the top of the ticket with Trump in a toss-up state like North Carolina. And Trump has been very vigorous in his endorsement of Mark Robinson, as well as he should be if he wants Mark Robinson to win. But so when people are talking to me about this, say, take Mark Robinson out of it, take all the other stuff out of it. In Iowa, we have this thing called the caucus process. And when these candidates come through who have held, by most standards, elected office of one form or another, they're a governor, they're a U.S. senator. You only have very few like a Herman Cain or a Donald Trump or a businessman who have not held public office before. We say, going through this process is like hiring anybody at the Family Leader or on the Steve Deace show, Veritas. And we say you need to go through the 3 C's. And the first C is character. And that means you go through their background. You go through everything that they have. Do they have the character that would earn your endorsement? And basically with character, at the end of the day, what you're saying, can I trust them? And can I trust them to lead with integrity because he or she is a person of integrity? Mm-hmm. And if you can't check off the character box, there's no reason to go to the other C's. Because the other C is competency. Are they competent to actually do the job of being governor of North Carolina? Are they capable of being president of the United States? Do they have that capacity to do that? There's a lot of people I like really well who have very strong character, but you shouldn't have them leading a state or leading a country. And then the last one's chemistry, and the chemistry one is, are they the right one for such a time as this? But Steve, it's just another day that ends in Y where we get surprised, if we want to use that word anymore, by somebody who has something in their private history, whether it be a pastor in Dallas, Texas, or whether it be a public official who's now the leading or the candidate for governor on the Republican ticket in North Carolina, or it be somebody else. And a lot of this stuff, as you know, gets done in private. And a lot of times what gets done in private will get revealed, and sometimes at the worst possible time, in public. So I'm saying our job is to do a proper job of vetting regardless of who the person is.
Number one, I think when we're all have sinned and gone
Amen.
astray. Everybody has something in their past. There's nobody that doesn't have something in their past. Everybody does.
But
Okay?
let me stop you for just a second, Steve. The difference between you with something in your past, because you've been very upfront with all the stuff you've had in your past. You've
Correct.
owned it. You've
Yep.
repented from it. And so therefore, if it gets brought up against you, like, Steve, I heard you used to be involved with pornography a lot. Yeah, let me tell you about those days. Those were dark days in my life. But
that's where I was actually going to go. To me, if you're Mark Robinson and you have a past, you've had ample opportunity to insulate yourself and you have a sympathetic story and of redemption and everything else. Mm-hmm. And that just obviously was not done here and is a complete and total miscalculation on his part. But you and I right now are working our own networks and associations and platforms to get a guy elected who's, a lot of people, there's people still in my own audience that don't think Donald Trump has the character for president. And so they don't want to vote for him. I don't even know what is the standard for it anymore. For example, is Trump's public behavior, the superiority of his policies and the impact that has on people and the betterment of their own lives, does that factor into his character? Is the failure of his marriages balanced by the fact that all of his children he's still close to them all, they're well adjusted, they're, they've had their own personal issues, but they're not showing up in Diddy videos and everything else like a lot of other celebrity kids are, and the kids that are born into the limelight, meaning that in an era where the culture is irrevocably broken, the simple formula of character that existed 40, 50 years ago that people could glom onto and grasp and understand, it's just not there anymore. And we can't even agree on what that standard is.
Well, there's no doubt about that. And matter of fact, we talked about being ministers of God, and therefore you should have the highest of standards, right? You shouldn't lower that bar, especially if you're going to be a public official who's a minister of God. With Trump, in some ways, even though he may not have repented, but he's owned most of the stuff. I remember the debate in 2016. He goes, of course, I've worked this system to my advantage. I know the system exceptionally well. I know how I can work it to my advantage versus your advantage. Been very open about it. The other part about 2024 with Trump versus 2016 with Trump is he has a record. He has a record of moving the embassy to Jerusalem. He has a record of appointing 3 Supreme Court justices. He has a record of defending religious liberty. He has a lot of records that say, okay, I agree with you. And at the end of the day, it comes down to a choice. Kamala Harris, to your point, Steve, all have fallen and gone or short of God's standard. But her policies are completely reckless and against the heart of God. So therefore, that comes down to the choice. I think Mark, and first of all, Mark Robinson, in this country, you're still innocent until proven guilty. So as you said, this is CNN. Is it made up or not made up? But the fact is, if it isn't made up, he should have owned that a long time ago. It should have been revealed a long time ago, and he wouldn't have to be dealing with this stuff the way it is now. And it's not just the governorship on the line. It's North Carolina on the line for the presidency as well.
Amen to that. All right, before we get to another bullet point that you wanted to discuss from the weekend, which I am anxious to discuss as well, a word about our friends over at Hillsdale College. They continue to add resources to help you defend your values and principles because they are leaders on the battlefield of education when it comes to defending liberty there. And you can check out now the Hillsdale College Podcast Network, whether it's the Larry Arnn Show, the Radio Free Hillsdale Hour, their online courses podcast. These are all top-notch. You'll find them on all major podcast platforms. They're excellent while taking a walk or driving to work. And you'll also find them when you go to daceforhillsdale.com. Find your new, we hope maybe at least second favorite behind us. Second favorite podcast when you go to daceforhillsdale.com. Look for the Hillsdale College Podcast Network there. Dace4, F-O-R, daceforhillsdale.com. Again, head over to daceforhillsdale.com. So this weekend, did some speaking in Nashville. Didn't get to watch as much football as I typically do, but The bits that I did watch this weekend, Bob, there were everywhere attack ads against Marionette Miller Meeks, a congresswoman from here in Iowa. And for people that don't know, she's the one she's, by the way, Marionette Miller Meeks has been running for Congress basically much of my adult life. Okay. I mean, how many times, I think it took her 4 chances, right, before she finally won her seat. Yeah. And then she won about like 100 votes and they tried stealing it from her, right? If I remember right, that's the story.
Eight
right?
votes.
8 votes.
Yeah.
It was even closer than I thought. Right. Okay. And for those of us that have known her, I've known the woman for almost 20 years. And she's never been pro-life. She's a doctor. She's never been pro-life, ever. And one of the reasons why she struggled to win a lot is she thought the best way to win kind of a purplish district, which is where she originally was to resent people like me and you. And that pro-life Christians had way too much influence in the party and everything else, right? Okay. Somehow, some way, I have no idea how, because I've known the woman for almost 20 years, and she's never been pro-life. Somehow, some way, she got some 100% grade from the Susan B. Anthony list. All right, so this is the whole, big baby thing. Just get an R after your name. Doesn't matter who you really are, what you really think. You get your pro-life Webelow badge to go out there and fool all the Christians. You've heard me railing against this for as long as you and I have known each other, Bob. Right? Okay. Well, the great irony of that scam is it's going to probably cost Marionette Miller Meeks her congressional seat. Frankly, she is getting destroyed. I mean, it was in every game I watched pro in college and I wasn't like long form other than the Lions game. I was tuning in and out from the road, and I couldn't get even on digital YouTube TV. She was in every commercial break I saw this weekend, getting annihilated for wanting to ban all abortions, and nothing could be further from the truth, actually. Okay, just getting annihilated, which the whole thing is deceptive. It's dishonest. It's not who she is. It's also deliciously ironic, Bob. Okay.
Well, when you take a look
at it, it's also that.
It definitely is, because Miller Meeks, I don't think anybody really knows what she is other than she's made a political calculation. In order to win in that district, you can't be 100% pro-life. So therefore, this is one of those districts we look at and go, well, if she's 60 or 80% with us, that's better than the one who's going to be 0% with us, right? But what she's learning is what Kim Reynolds learned several years ago, she told me, is that she's going to get attacked regardless. So why not lead with bold and courageous? No more plaid pastels is what Reagan called it. Why not raise the flag of bold conservatism high and lead that way? Miller Meeks has not been able to do that, but what she's been able to find out now is that Bohannon, her opponent, Christine Bohannon, is just labeling her as an extreme pro-life congresswoman. Nothing could be further from the truth. But she's still owning it. And what they're trying to do, Steve, they're trying to bait her into saying, no, I'm not all that pro-life. I have a lot of exceptions, and I'm more pro-choice than you think I am. And all of a sudden, now you dampen your own base. So Christine Bohannon and a Democrat is in a win-win here. Either she has to own what she's accusing her of, or she has to disavow what she's accusing her of, which will dampen her own base. That's still a very, very tough district for her to win. It's going to be a very close race. But I think all politicians could learn something from this. As you said, Donald Trump cannot run away from appointing 3 Supreme Court justices that led to the overturn of Roe v. Wade. They're going to accuse him of being the most pro-life extreme president ever. In the same way now, Miller Meeks. But with what Kim Reynolds said, they're going to attack me anyhow, so why don't they attack me for doing the right thing? Signing the heartbeat bill, the religious liberty bill, the school choice bill, other stuff. Attack me for doing the right thing.
The irony of watching Marionette Miller Meeks try 20 years to win a congressional seat and lose it over the very issue she has tried to betray throughout the entirety of that 20 years. And because she was given an accommodation by the pro-life industry she never earned and never believed. That's the entire, and meanwhile, we're probably going to lose every amendment in the country other than Florida right now, okay? And we're only going to win that probably because it requires 60%. Whatever this thing has been, okay, over all these years, which basically overturned Roe by accident and then had no post-Roe v. Wade plan. And then to see Marionette Miller Meeks just watch her, I mean, it's almost like divine kind of stuff, Bob, if you know what I'm saying.
Well,
okay?
The ads are forcing her to take a position right now. So we'll see what she does with it, but you're right. These ads are brutal against her.
And you might as well if you're going to get credited with the magic R, you might, as Bob just said, you might as well be sincerely pro-life, because they're going to label you all like that anyway. And at least you would get some kind of bounce from our base of enthusiasm in response. Or you can just keep losing like Marion Miller Meeks, where you're in a no man's land, where you're not going to get that extra layer of pro-life, convicted voter for you, while getting accused of being deserving of that support you won't get anyway from the other side. I'll give you the last word.
Well, the last word is I want to go to another ad, and that is when I was watching the Iowa-Minnesota game, and Kamala Harris runs an ad in Iowa. And you and I talked about that poll, and we believe it's a narrative poll and those type of things. But I think, is she taking a page out of Hillary Clinton's playbook and saying, I'm going to start playing in areas that really aren't mine, but I'm going to try to expand the map? If she does that, I believe she's wasting resources. I believe it gives an advantage to Trump. And a reminder to all the pastors out there, because I had a lot of your listeners email us, go to choosewell2024.com. Get your resources there on how you can engage your congregation biblically to make a difference in this election.
Give that website out one more time.
choosewell2024.com. choosewell2024.com.
choosewell2024.com is where you want to go. That's choosewell2024.com. All right, brother. Thank you very much. Good to see you again as always. Appreciate you.
Good to see you. God bless.